Disney does not abandon things. That is the entire brand. Everything maintained, repainted, swept clean before the gates open. So this is the part that doesn't fit. For roughly 17 years, the Walt Disney Company left an entire water park to rot in the woods at the edge of Bay Lake. The slides stayed standing, the pools sat there, and because the power to the site was never fully cut, the lights, by most accounts, kept switching themselves on and off over a park with no one in it. Its name was River Country. It opened in 1976, the first water park Disney ever built. It is also one of only 2 parks in the company's history to close for good and simply never come back. This is the story of how it opened, why it quietly died after the 2001 season, the rumor that has chased it ever since, and what finally rose on the land where it sat. If you like the quiet, well-researched corners of places like this, consider subscribing and staying to the end. There is a stretch of shoreline on Bay Lake, beside the Fort Wilderness campground at Walt Disney World, that most guests pass without a second thought. In the summer of 1976, it was the most novel thing Disney had built in years. River Country opened on June 20, 1976. It was the first water park the Walt Disney Company ever built, and arguably the first themed water park anywhere. The concept was simple and a little old-fashioned on purpose. Disney called it an old-fashioned swimming hole, with a twist of Huckleberry Finn. The working title had been Pop's Willow Grove. It was small, about 6 acres. You could walk the whole thing in a few minutes. But the design was unusual. Instead of a concrete pool fed by city water, River Country drew its water straight from Bay Lake. Engineers dammed off a cove, filtered the water, and kept the level inside the park slightly higher than the lake outside, so the water spilled out over the barrier and lake water could never flow back in. The bottom was sand. The boulders were man-made. It was built to feel like a creek you might have found on your own as a kid. It was also designed as part of a whole. The rustic theming tied directly into Fort Wilderness around it, so the campground, the pioneer setting, and the swimming hole all belonged to the same idea. The company was proud of it. In its 1976 annual report to shareholders, Disney ran the park under a single headline, a splashing success. By that first season, as many as 4,700 guests were coming through in a single day. The opening had a small piece of history attached to it. The first official ride down the park's slide, Whoop and Holler Hollow, was taken by Susan Ford. She was 18, and her father was the sitting president of the United States. That was the era River Country belonged to. Before the water park arms race, before the lazy rivers ran a quarter mile and the slides needed their own towers, it was the modest first draft of an idea the rest of the industry would spend the next 20 years making bigger. For a while, modest was enough. People who grew up going there tend to describe it the same way. The sand, the tire swing, the rope drop into the cove. Less a thrill park than a place where you spent a long, slow afternoon. Here is the thing about that shoreline now. Take a boat across Bay Lake today and you would see construction, or trees, or the ordinary back edge of a Disney resort. You would not see a water park. Nothing up there tells you this is where Disney first worked out what a water park could be. For its first decade, River Country had the water park business at Walt Disney World entirely to itself. That changed in stages. In 1989, Disney opened Typhoon Lagoon. In 1995, it opened Blizzard Beach. Both were far larger. Both had more slides, bigger pools, longer lazy rivers, and the kind of fully built theme that River Country's simple swimming hole idea was never trying to match. They also had something River Country never really had: convenient parking, their own bus transport. River Country sat in an awkward corner of the resort, reached mostly by boat or by the winding roads of Fort Wilderness. So now Disney ran 3 water parks. 2 were newer, bigger, and easier to reach. The third was small, charming, and increasingly beside the point. You can see where this goes. River Country closed at the end of the 2001 season, the way it closed at the end of every season. Warm weather ends in Florida, the water parks wind down, and everyone assumes they will open again in the spring. Then came September 11, 2001. In the months after the attacks, tourism fell, and Walt Disney World moved hard to cut costs across the entire resort. Hours were cut. Park schedules shrank. Some hotels and restaurants closed whole sections, or shut down entirely, to concentrate guests elsewhere. It was a company managing a sudden, painful drop in revenue. When spring 2002 arrived, the other 2 water parks reopened. River Country did not. For a while, the official line was that it might come back. On April 11, 2002, the Orlando Sentinel reported that Disney's first water park had closed and might not reopen. A Disney spokesman left the door open, saying it could be reopened if there was, in his words, enough guest demand. That demand never showed up in a way that justified the cost. 3 years passed with the park sitting closed. Then, on January 20, 2005, Disney made it official. River Country would not reopen. That put it on a very short list. Along with Discovery Island, the nature park on the same lake that closed in 1999, River Country became one of only 2 parks in Disney's entire history to close permanently. Here is what's worth slowing down on. There was no fire, no flood, no single disaster you could point a camera at. River Country died from arithmetic, an older, smaller product made redundant by Disney's own newer parks, then finished off by a national event that had nothing to do with water slides. When the numbers stopped working, the company chose not to spend the money to bring it back. That is the real reason. It is also, for a lot of people, an unsatisfying one. A beloved little park closing because of a spreadsheet does not feel like enough of a story. So over the years, a different story grew up to fill the gap. Before we get into that one, a quick thing. If you've made it this far, you're exactly who these videos are made for, and a like genuinely helps more people find them. And I'm curious, did you ever actually go to River Country before it closed? If you did, tell me what you remember in the comments. Then stay with me, because this next part is where the real story and the rumor finally split apart. The story people tell is about a brain-eating amoeba. It is worth being careful here, because underneath the rumor there is a real death and a real family. In August 1980, an 11-year-old boy from New York died after swimming at River Country. The cause was amoebic meningoencephalitis, an infection from a microscopic organism called Naegleria fowleri, which lives in warm, fresh water and, in very rare cases, enters through the nose and reaches the brain. According to an Associated Press report from that month, investigators from the CDC and New York health authorities traced the source to River Country because it was the only place the boy had recently been swimming. He was the 4th person in Florida to die from the infection that year. State health officials were clear at the time that this was not really Disney's fault. The organism can live in almost any warm freshwater lake in Florida. There was no outbreak they could identify, no negligence they could point to. A Disney spokesman said the company monitored its water quality closely and did not know of anything more it could have done. That is the kernel of truth inside the rumor. Here is what the rumor gets wrong. River Country did not close after that death. It stayed open for another 21 years. Sit with that for a second. If Disney believed the water was quietly killing its guests, the park would not have run through the rest of the 1980s, the entire 1990s, and into 2001. Tens of thousands of people kept swimming there. The amoeba did not close River Country. The math did. There were 2 other tragedies over the park's life, both drownings, a 14-year-old visitor in 1982 and a 13-year-old in 1989. They belong in the honest record of the place, and they deserve to be stated plainly rather than folded into a ghost story. There is a second version of the rumor too, that a new Florida law banned water parks from using natural lake water and forced River Country to close. That one is simply false. When people went and read the actual state regulations, there was no such requirement. The water only had to meet quality standards, which Disney could have engineered if it wanted to. The law did not close the park either. What actually happened next is stranger than the rumor. Disney did not demolish River Country. It just left it. For roughly 17 years, the park sat behind a plain green fence at the edge of Fort Wilderness, slowly going back to the woods. A sign on that fence read, simply, "Sorry, River Country is closed." The slides faded. Plants pushed up through the walkways. And because Disney never fully cut the power to the site, the lights, by many accounts, kept switching on and off over the empty park, and its old closing time music was said to still play to no one. Part of what makes that eerie is how close it stayed to ordinary life. The old entrance gate stayed in use for years as the way into a Disney barbecue dinner show. The restroom and shower building kept serving the public. Guests walked right past the edge of an abandoned park without realizing what sat on the other side of the fence. The explorers realized. River Country became one of the most sought-after urban exploration sites in Florida, precisely because it was Disney. People climbed the fence or slipped in along the backstage driveway to photograph the drained pools and the rusting slides. Those photographs are most of the reason you have heard of this place at all. In 2016, a small official signal arrived. On August 25 of that year, Disney announced it would drain and fill in Upstream Plunge, the park's main pool, which had held around 330,000 gallons of water. Stand at that green fence in those years, and you would see overgrown slides and a quiet, locked gate. What you could not see, just by looking, was that you were standing in front of the single most photographed abandoned place in the entire resort. The reason river country is no longer hidden in the woods is that eventually the woods lost. In March 2018, Disney filed permits for a new project on the land under the codename Project 89. Within the year, it had a public name, Reflections, a Disney lakeside lodge, a nature-themed resort built partly on the footprint of the old water park. In March 2019, the demolition finally began. By around the 20th of April that year, most of what remained of river country was gone. The slides, the structures, the last of upstream plunge. The site was cleared and graded flat. After more than 4 decades, the actual physical park stopped existing, and then the new resort stalled. In 2020, the pandemic shut down Walt Disney World, and Disney paused construction on Reflections. The cleared land sat empty again, not as a ruined water park this time, but as a halted construction site, which is its own quieter kind of abandonment. For several years, very little happened on that shoreline at all. The project came back to life slowly, and with a new name. Today, the land that was river country is the site of Disney Lakeshore Lodge, a Disney Vacation Club resort now under active construction. It is themed around nature and Disney's nature films, Bambi, Pocahontas, Brother Bear, and is planned to open in the summer of 2027, with somewhere around 967 rooms and villas along Bay Lake. So if you have been picturing a place you can still go and explore, set that down gently. There is no abandoned water park to find anymore. The slides are gone. The green fence is gone. The drained pools are gone. What stands there now is a large hotel rising floor by floor, on a piece of shoreline cleared so completely that you would never guess what used to be there. There is one small detail worth holding on to. The plans for the new resort include a pool area with a small lazy river, a quiet echo, intentional or not, of the swimming hole that started all of this back in 1976. This is the part that tends to stay with people. For 17 years, river country was a genuine ghost, a fully built park, wired and lit, decaying in plain sight at the edge of one of the most visited places on Earth. It was strange precisely because Disney, of all companies, let it stay strange. And then, in the span of a couple of years, it was erased and replaced with exactly the kind of polished, profitable, perfectly maintained thing you would expect from Disney in the first place. Look at that shoreline today and you see a crane and a future hotel. Soon the satellite view will show a resort with a clean blue pool and a little lazy river. What it will not show is the first water park Disney ever built, or the 17 quiet years it spent rotting in the trees with the lights still coming on at night. Somewhere in those abandoned years, the lights over river country kept blinking on and off on a schedule no one was left to watch. Now even that is gone, cleared for something new. If you went to river country before it closed, I would like to know what you remember about it. Leave it below. And if you want more places like this one, the quiet ones the maps forget, subscribe and stick around.